of going with the theme of Mission Impossible and Vonage Knowledge Quest. We are going to get our mission, and let's see. Oh, so let me hit play. And this agent's going to have 3 functionalities. I'm not sure. I'll play it again a little bit, maybe slower, but basically this agent's going to let our users do 3 major features. First feature is we're going to show off the new Knowledge AI functionality in AI Studio. So that allows you to use a built-in LLM, and you can train it on your own knowledge base. So basically, users can come to WhatsApp, ask any question, and as long as the agent can find it in the training materials, it's kind of speak to it like an LLM, like ChatGPT, Gemini, what we've all gotten used to. So that's incredible. I'll speak a little bit why. Oh, sorry, that's the volume going well. Mute it. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Let me see. I can go into the slide and mute it, and I will start it. So we're going to build a WhatsApp agent. It's going to be 3 things. It's going to let our users ask questions, and we're going to let them ask questions about whatever they want, and using the new Vonage Knowledge AI LLM functionality. But the cool thing is, because this is for business case, we don't want our LLM to be able to answer any question. We want it just to answer questions about our specific business or organization. So I'm going to show how this new feature, Knowledge AI, lets us do that. Second, we'll build a pretty quick, easy feedback form using Google Sheets so that we can get feedback from our users and then store it in a database, in this case, Google Sheets. And then the last functionality will be connecting WhatsApp to Slack. You could connect it with any sort of messaging backend, but Slack works really, really well, and show how we can create kind of a custom customer service experience with Slack. Did that make sense, everyone? Without the music? Sorry, I was really excited with the Mission Impossible music. Okay. So moving on. Yep, so that's going to be our mission, Operation WhatsApp. And just a little overview of what AI Studio is. It's our no-code, low-code platform, which is built upon our Messages API and our Voice API. So this allows you to build conversational AI agents with a drag-and-drop platform. So you don't need to be a developer. You can also add custom code on top of it, and we'll see how using webhooks you can integrate with other powerful platforms, like we'll see with Google Sheets and we'll see with Slack. So it does allow you to build out pretty customizable agents. And it has an internal AI for handling, wow, I can't think of, NLU and NLP. So we have our own AI team that specifically for the most common use cases with the AI Studio are customer service and outbound. So our agents are trained to be really fine-tuned for that. Yeah, and it's really easy to get started. So we'll see how that goes in just a second. And just one more time to run through the what's the plan for tonight's workshop. So we're going to create an agent. And first step is we're going to use that Knowledge AI to create a flexible and accurate FAQ. You'll see how powerful this can be, where you can just throw in all of your company's documents and information, and that way offload a lot of customer service onto the virtual agent. Step 2 will be to create a feedback form and then be able to store that in a Google Sheet. And then step 3 will be to connect for that live agent on Slack. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm starting here in the dashboard, and sorry, now actually I'm going to put the chat here so that I can keep an eye on it. So starting in the AI Studio dashboard, you can see, go to create an agent, and when you want to create your own, just a heads up, we're covering a lot of information today, so I think the easiest, best way is just to follow along. And because we have such an intimate crowd, I'm happy to stop and help along the way, and especially at the end if you want to try to start building some of this stuff out yourself. But when you go to create your own agent, you go to create and then WhatsApp. So you'll pick a region. That's where the servers are stored on the AWS. So you want to pick whichever one's closest to where you think most of your users are going to be. Add a name for your agent, language, and then AI engine is something we're rolling out, but we are basically now with all of these LLM models, which are becoming super powerful, and really high performance, we started integrating them into our, like, to augment what we have inside of AI Studio. And then time zone will be, so whatever the time is of your local, of like wherever your agent, your users are. So let's just say UTC, and then you'd start from scratch. And then this is just the important part, inbound or outbound. So that's whether if you want to create an agent that's responding to user inquiry, or if you want to have some kind of external trigger, whether that's coming from your application, from your own software, or building out some kind of integration, maybe with like Zapier or something like that. So like I said, we are going to just walk through this agent that we have working, because there's a lot of content. We're going to go through each step, step by step, and just show you how that works. So once you create an agent, you're going to be inside of the AI Studio canvas. If you've ever used a low-code platform before, it'll look pretty familiar. On the left here, you have your different nodes, your building blocks, and they're organized by functionality. So to start, you have conversation, which is like sending messages, getting information back from the user, classification. So building out agents in the past, especially pre-LLMs, one of the hardest things and one of the most frustrating things for developers was that you had to define each intent. So what was the desired outcome for your users, right? Do they want to make a purchase or make an order? Do they want to schedule a meeting? Do they want to be switched over to a live human agent? Do they want to maybe send an email like feedback form? So for each intent, you had to figure that out. And now we're going to see today with Knowledge AI how that's been a lot simplified. But we still do have that ability for classification. And I can talk about why that's still very useful. Conditions, so just in a visual form, it's like doing an if-else. If the user wants one thing, or if the user meets one criteria, take them in one route. If they meet a different criteria, take them in a different route. Some advanced blocks, so custom code. Like I said, you can add JavaScript if you want into your agent. And then we have actions, so things like send an email, send an SMS, live agent routing, which is what we're going to use to connect to Slack. And then integrations, which is really what makes the AI Studio very powerful. Webhooks, so you can connect to any external service that has an API. And then also we have some pretty awesome built-in Salesforce connectors. And then flow control is just a way to keep your agent tidy. I'll zoom out just so you can see very quickly. Here we see a bunch of nodes, and actually some of them are hidden because I've created subflows to make our agent nice and neat. But you can imagine in production how if you have quite a few different flows and actions for your users, this can get messy really quick. Uh, so we started the start node. Welcome, Gabo. Oh, sorry. You joined just in time. We're just getting started. So the first thing we'll do in our agent is we want to say hello, right? Whenever our user sends us a message. This is also, by the way, this is an inbound agent. So it starts with the user texting our company on WhatsApp. So we'll send a hello. So we'll come over here, we'll hit send message, and then we just click and it'll pop open here from the side. So just to make it nice and neat, say hello. And we can see that we have quite a few different types of messages that we can send: text, image, location. So that's kind of like a Google Maps. You can even add a video. So let's leave that. And I know that video was pretty fast and a little bit loud, but in the very beginning, we wanted to we said a hello from Lucinda, who's going to be for the agent tonight. This is Lucinda's company. Knowledge AI is her product. So everything we're going to do is we're going to create an agent for our Knowledge Quest. Sorry, I said Knowledge AI. For Knowledge Quest, this event series, the Knowledge Quest users. So if you had any questions or feedbacks, this is the agent that you would go to. And you might have noticed that I connected from one node to the next node. And that's how our AI Studio agent knows where it should go, what should be the next flow. And one nice thing is that we have in Studio a built-in tester. So a lot easier than when you're programming, you can just check that every step is working exactly as you imagine it. And this is one of the things that I really recommend, just like when you're coding. It's good to check each step so that you catch any errors right away. So we have a tester that's here inside the web, and we can also test in a test environment in WhatsApp. But let's just test here. And we see, so it mimics the user sending the first message, and this is what the agent would respond. Beautiful picture of Lucinda welcoming us to the agent and welcoming us to Knowledge Quest. Great. So if you remember what was our the mission for our operation tonight, the first step was to create a LLM that can an LLM powered agent that can handle very flexible but accurate information about this Knowledge Quest. So how can we what's the first step? We need to first figure out, all right, well, what does the user actually want to do? So we will, again, from the side here, we'll do a collect input, and then we'll pop that open to customize it. So there's a couple important things to highlight in the collect input. So here we might call it collect user inquiry or user action, something like that. And we see that it has something called parameter. So parameters in AI Studio are like variables. They're basically little blocks that can hold us dynamic pieces of information. So whether the user wants to ask a question, or the user wants to add feedback, or the user wants to speak directly to a human, we'll hold that all in one variable, and we'll call that user action. And just like in the send message, in the collect input node, we have a couple of options. Because this is in WhatsApp, we can collect text, or we can also give a really nice user experience with the reply buttons. So that's like in WhatsApp, where you have just a button that you can press, and we'll connect that to an underlying value so we can use it in the logic of our application, of our agent. We also have list messages. So lists you have the same kind of functionality as the reply buttons, but it's when you have more then 2. It gives you, I think, up to 5. And so for each option, then you add a button, a description, and a value. In our action, we have 3. So we'll connect here and just pop that open. So in our action, we have 3. So I misspoke earlier when I said 2 on the reply button. I think 3 is the max. So in the reply, we need to kind of help our user understand what is that input that we're looking for. So what can I help you with? Again, we're going to store that to the user action. And then we create 3 options: question, feedback, and chat. And you see how that aligns with how they're displayed. The button itself will look like this, and then the way it's stored in our agent will be one of these 3 values. So let's just check that that works. We'll say save and exit, and then we can hit test. So in the tester, you see that it's still stuck on our last time that we tested. So I'll hit refresh.
1, but it's 12. No, it's 12.
And now we see that not only do we get
Huh?
the welcome message, but we also get our collect input.
Okay, I still got it.
And say I have question,
Okay.
and then we get stuck. So why are we getting stuck? Well, we haven't filled out what we're supposed to do next, right? This node isn't connected to anyone. So let's then fill out that flow. So we had 3 options, and we had 3 options here, right? So we need to somehow decide which one did the user click. So like I said, at the start in these conversation nodes, we have a couple of ways to decipher what is the user's intention, what is their intent. We can use classification, which lets things be a little bit more open-ended for the user. But because we just have 3 and we're predefining them ourselves, we can just use a condition. So a condition will look kind of familiar if you've coded. It's basically allows you to do if else. So if, for instance, in this situation, if the user action is equal to, and then I think we said question. So now we've created a condition here, and then we should give it a nice title. So user action equals question. So that kind of creates our first if, and here we should also put a title on what we're checking against. User action, what did they select? We could create another one, is the user, and you see that we have, depending on what the expected value is in that parameter of user action, here, because we know exactly the 3 options and that they're going to be 3 different words, we want to make sure it's equal to, and then maybe the next one would be feedback. And here we would call it user action equals feedback. And we could save that. So now we have a couple of different conditions. So let's close that, and just want to show that we have those 3 in our conditional node. So checking, is the user action a question? Is it a feedback, or was it chat, as we defined in the last one? Oh, I don't know why this slipped down here. And we see for each one of those conditions, it creates what we call an exit point. So that just lets us connect to the nodes. So the first flow we want to fill out is if the user picks a question. And so then the next thing we would need to do, if the user picks a question, is we want to know what do they have a question about. So we'll do another collect input. You can see that we have that one ready here. So we'll need we created a new parameter that will store what is their actual question. Give it a little hint. Sure, what can I help you with? And one thing that I did miss at the first one is we can tell AI Studio what kind of input they should give. So if the user answers with an image, it will say we can then give the user a couple of retries. So we can give them maybe 2 times to say the right expected type of question, and say, sorry, I didn't understand that. Try typing your question. And that's going to save to this variable, which we'll then use to connect to our knowledge base. So we can connect it to our question. And then before we get to the knowledge base, let's just test that that's all working. Hit refresh again. I have a question. Sir, what can I help you with? So that works. And then let's put in a location. Let's put in a location. Okay. Not sure. Maybe the location itself is not working in. So let's put in an image, and it should tell us. Sorry, I didn't understand that. Try typing your question. Perfect. Exactly as we expected. So let's ask a question about Vonage Knowledge Quest. When is the next knowledge quest? And nothing happens. Exactly as we expected, right? Because we haven't filled out our next exit point and where it should go. So this is where we'll start to build out our knowledge AI. And the way that knowledge AI works is that we have a node here. Where is it? It's called Q&A. And so in this Q&A node, we need to, as we've done in the past, we're going to pass it a parameter. So here, that is what I call it, generative AI inquiry. That's the thing that we got back from the user in the last step. And then we're going to get the answer. So we'll call that knowledge answer. And then we have a couple of settings that we can help guide our agent. So how long it should wait to look up the question, that can be very useful, right? Users are quite impatient. And if the agent's looking too long to think of an answer, they might quit the app, where maybe you might want to create some other behavior that if it takes them too long, you can take them to a different answer. This is something actually really new. We just put this out, I think, last week, where you can tell the agent to shoot for a length in the answer, and you can give it some guidelines of how it should respond. Now, the one part that I didn't talk about, the index, that's a little bit more complicated. And what that is basically, what is the knowledge base that the underlying LLM will be able to go and pull its answers from? And the reason that I didn't talk about that till now is because we need to actually go and create that knowledge base repository. So for this, we have to get out of our agent. We go to this tab where it says knowledge AI, and this is where you create these knowledge bases, these indexes. So indexes are made up of sources. Sources are just like one page of text. It can be a PDF, it can be a text, it can be also a URL. So we can see here that I've pre-populated with some sources already. We had the blog post. We had the blog post that I think Lucinda wrote. So we can hit preview, and then it will actually take us to show us what's inside of that source. So it takes us to this URL and shows us that this is actually what's the information that's underlying that. So if I come back, we can also see I've added in here the pages for the events. So if we go here, oh, that didn't. Oh, sorry about that. That didn't make any sense. I went to the event, but then I had a bit of an infinite loop there. I forgot that the event page would take me. Sorry. The event page took me to the other, to the software for the event, and then I had it crash because Google Meet didn't know what to show. Anyway, we have a few different websites here that have information about Knowledge Quest. So what we can do actually here is, where am I looking for this thing? Sorry. The last thing I want to show is that also not only can we do websites, but we can do PDFs. So actually, if we hit add a source, we can do local files. So I basically, in this Knowledge Quest, I took all the information about the actually prize that we have. That we have a giveaway tonight. So for Paul, Jay, and Gabo, you have a very good chance, and we're gonna ask our agent some questions about this giveaway and how you can win the grand prize. So now that we have these sources, and we've seen how we can add them from a file, or where you'll add the file here and give it a name, or add a URL here and give it a name the same. And you can see that if it's a website, it can be like a regular website. It can be a PDF that's stored, or a text file. So the same options that you have as local files, but hosted somewhere. So once you have all of the sources for your agent, then you can basically wrap them all up in an index. And don't worry, you don't have to do all of the perfect sources. You can change them later. You can delete them, add more. And so cool thing is, once you create an index here, so you create an index, let's call this one Knowledge Quest 2. And here, let's just add the blog post, for instance. And we're going to create an index. So really nice is that before you even add it to your agent, the Knowledge AI tool has the ability that you can test it. So in this blog post, I know that Lucinda wrote about the first workshop that happened last month, today's workshop, and there's another workshop next month. So let's just say, let's ask some questions that we know it'll have. So what, actually, well, yeah, I'll say, what is Knowledge Quest? Not unable to follow it to give a relevant answer. That is not a good. Let's say, what is Vonage Knowledge Quest? Vonage Knowledge Quest is a free online event. It's kind of interesting to see why this one didn't work. It says there's no relevant answers, but you can see here we have this little icon here, which then will tell us when it creates an answer, where did it get that answer from? And then we can open that source up. So this tool, you can see that it should know what Knowledge Quest is, but for some reason it didn't. It doesn't seem to have enough context. Now I'm kind of curious about that, because Knowledge Quest is in that blog quite a lot. So if we just say, sorry, not knowledge blog, Knowledge Quest. And what about, let's say, Knowledge Quest workshop. So here, it seems that we need to give it just a little bit extra, saying workshop, Knowledge Quest. What is Knowledge Quest? One thing that should be noted here is, if we go into this blog post, we see a lot of information, Knowledge Quest, your Knowledge Quest, but we don't actually ever see anything that just says Knowledge Quest ? And then has the answer, right? And nowhere in our application did we have to say, if the user asks this question, if the user asks Vonage Knowledge Quest, respond with this specific answer. Before LLMs, you would have to do that for each possible variation of how someone might ask a question. So I know that we've all been spoiled with ChatGPT, but just having this ability to you see, at first I said, what is Vonage Knowledge Quest? The way that we would expect it. But anyone that's built an app or built for real users knows that users never behave the way that you want them to. And so let's see, I want to see if we can maybe get it to, if we give it all of these sources, let's try here. If we say, what is Knowledge Quest? Yeah, Paul, no problem. We will definitely get that to you. And one thing that I want to shout out is if you have any questions, I'm always available on the Vonage community Slack. I'm happy to go over any particular, specific things that you want to learn or want to build out. I'm very accessible and happy and excited to build with people that are interested. So if we put in what is Knowledge Quest, we can see that it can pick that up. So given just a little bit more context, it starts to answer a lot more questions. And so then if I put in here, what's the next workshop? Mission Impossible 3, the amazing workshop that's going to be with Dwayne next month. So that's all good. We're asking questions that we know it has context for, but what about maybe a question that we think it shouldn't answer? Because kind of one of the big reasons that we launched this Knowledge AI, we had actually an integration before for Gen AI. And the big problem that we had there was that the LLM basically wanted to answer everything, and it hallucinated a lot. And that might be okay and funny when you're, using ChatGPT to write poems or write jokes or whatever. But imagine the case where you have actual business context and a user says, "What's the price of, what's the price of your service?" And the LLM doesn't have the answer for your price, so it grabs somebody else's price. That could be a big problem, right? So our team spent quite a lot of time to build out this Knowledge AI functionality so that you can make sure that it's only getting answers from the ones that you provided. So if I put in here instead, I don't know, somebody have a funny question they want to ask the agent. Let's just say, how much time does Benjamin spend on his hair? Unable to find relevant answer. Right, probably because that number is way too big. But it's exactly what we would hope, right? That the LLM is not trying to create an answer just because the user asked one, but it's only getting information. Let's see, how many developers does it take to create a low-code application? Well, I think that there's no real answer because they spend too long complaining about all the things the low-code doesn't do. Unable to find answer. So I think that's we show that the Knowledge AI index is working. It can answer the questions that we expect. And so this is how you would build out your knowledge base. And then we can go back to the agent that we were building before. And we can now use that index, Knowledge Quest Mission Impossible. We're going to pass it the query parameter, which we got before from the user. And then whatever answer we get, we're going to put it in knowledge answer. And if we want, we could set a length and a guideline. I haven't played with these. Honestly, they're brand new. I haven't even played with these yet. So I'm kind of scared to see how they're going to work. So we connect our node. And we see that we have 3 exit points here. One is just give us the answer. The second one is if the agent doesn't know. That means that the user asked a question that was outside of its knowledge repository. And then third one is if something failed with getting the answer that's not just it couldn't find an answer, but something technically failed. So we'll also send a message to the user. If it gets an answer, we just give them the answer. Otherwise, we want to give the user a little bit of nice handling, saying, sorry, we don't know. And we'll connect those in. And now again, we can, just like I said before, we'll test each step. So I have a question. So what can I help you with? Was there a knowledge quest in 2024? Oh, sorry, I don't know how to use that. I think it needs maybe the word Vonage. Again, this is why it's really important when you build with this to test out, really test out all the various variations of asking questions. Tell me about previous Vonage knowledge quests. And now it tells us in that index, one of the pages I posted was the event we had last year with our colleague Jim, who talked about PHP. So perfect. It created an answer, and I can see that it's actually taken a couple of pieces of information from different sources. I recognize that this is actually from the page about this year's knowledge quest. It puts together information from last year's page, and creates a much more natural answer. So you can see here the power of using the LLM. And here what I've done is I created a little mini flow that we don't really need to show, but basically allows us to keep asking questions. And what came out of a session that I ran a few months ago is that we're gonna try and build this into the AI Studio itself, so you don't have to every time say, I want to ask another question. So if I say no, then it's going to ask me to take me to the main menu. I say yeah. So we've finished our first mission. So we can give ourselves quick round of applause. 1 out of 3. We've built out the first feature, and you can see kind of the power of AI Studio that really quickly, once you get comfortable and know how to use it, very quickly you can build out all of this functionality and integration without having to do very much setup at all, and you get a lot right out of the box. So we go back to the place where we had a fork in the road, where the user is saying, do I want to ask a question? Do I have feedback? Or let me talk with Lucinda. So let's go through that second flow, which is feedback. So again, if you say feedback, similar to how I have a question, we need to then ask the user, what is the feedback? So here, we're again going to use the reply buttons because those are a little bit nicer for users than having to type out. We give them 3 options. Do you have feedback about tonight's content? Do you have feedback about the food? Feedback should be bad because there is no food. And the third is feedback about the swag. I guess we could say the swag tonight is API credits or that Lego giveaway. So in a second, you'll be able to give Lucinda your thoughts. And we're going to save that to a new parameter. Again, now we're getting a new piece of information from the user. We're going to get the type of feedback. So that's why I called it here collect type. And we'll save it to, sorry, that should be, I don't know why that's feature. It should be type. But I'm going to leave it just because I know that this one works. So once we get that, which kind of feedback we're getting, then we need to ask, so we can go here, we'll say feedback, let's say content, and then nothing happens, because then we need to get the actual feedback from the user, right? We've now filtered it for what kind, and we will now get another collect input. Here we're collecting the actual feedback, and we will let the user save it in feedback, and we'll let the user have an open answer called text. Sorry, we'll let them have an open answer of text type, And you can see here we're using something new with this purple. So what I mislabeled as feature should be type. What kind of feedback? This is how we can use those parameters, as I talked before, where we're storing value, right? So we stored in the last step, we stored what type of feedback it is. So now it doesn't matter which kind, we'll give a nice prompt to the user. And so we've seen those before. Now we're going to introduce something new from down here in our kind of advanced in the integrations section. It's our webhook node. So webhooks allow us to connect with any third-party external service that has an API. So here, if you've done coding in the past, this will look a bit familiar to you using a REST API. So basically, the way these APIs work, which connect different applications, is that you can make a request. So in the request, you need to say, do I want to get information? Do I want to create some kind of new information? Do I want to delete information? Or do I want to update information? And most of the time, we're going to be doing either just a get or a post. So that's to grab some information from an external source or to create some new information in that external application. Then we need to say, where are we sending that request to? That will be that external API. And then the API might be expecting some information from us. Headers, that's usually to authenticate, basically to say, hey, we are a safe, we're not a bad actor here. We're passing the information in a way that you're expecting and let us through, kind of like a security door. And then in the body or in the query params is where we can actually pass our information. So if we're going to create new information, we'll pass it in the body. So now we can see here how that's going to look on our feedback form, which we're going to store our information in a Google Sheet. So actually, before I open that up, I'm going to just show this Google Sheet. So we're using this as an example of a very basic kind of like a database. You could use that webhook node to hook it up to any sort of database that you have. But here we have our Google Sheet. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So that'll be the 4 pieces of information we get from our agent, right? So whenever a user gives us feedback, we're going to store the name, we're going to store their number, and we get those 2 already built in from the WhatsApp, which is pretty cool. We get that feedback on what type of feedback that they have, and then what was their comment. And so how do we do this? It's a little bit more than just using the AI Studio node. What we need to do is we need to basically turn our Google Sheet into an API. And G Suite does that really nicely and fairly easy with this thing called app scripts. So I'm going to open this, and it's okay if you don't understand it. It's I'm happy to go over this a bit more in depth. But basically, app scripts lets us write some code linked to this Google Sheet, and what it does is it creates an endpoint. So basically, a point that where it's expecting requests to come into, and this endpoint we're calling it a post request. So it's saying you can send me requests that you tell me are posts. And then here we define what it's expecting it to do. So here, basically, it takes that information, parses it into something called the JSON. So it just formats it, cleans up the data into a way that it can use it. And then from that data, which is called post data, then it's going to look for each of these pieces of information. So in there, it's going to expect something called username. It's going to expect something called phone number. It's going to expect a feature and feedback. And then it turns that into these local variables. And then it goes into that spreadsheet, looks for the specific sheet called feedbacks. So if I go here, so in Google Sheets, you can have a lot of sheets like this, but it's going to look for the one called feedbacks. and then inside of feedbacks, it's going to take those pieces of information and create a new row. So it's going to find whatever's the last row and then add a new row, inserting in this order in the first column the username, the second column the phone number, feature, and then feedback. And then when it does it successfully, it's going to respond to our agent with a little message that says row added successfully. I know that was a lot of information. Are there any questions? Jaya Prasad or Gabo? Okay. So we have our Google Sheet set up with our app scripts. One thing that I do need to mention is if you want to use app scripts to add code in Google Suite, basically the way that you turn this into a API is that you need to deploy it. So the cool thing is that you don't need to like host this on a server or figure out how to make this thing alive. By clicking deploy, you make it deploy alive. You have to do a little bit of setup here. I guess I'll just do this. I'm scared I'm gonna break something, but let's just do it. So basically here, I just did a new deployment and then it gives me this URL. And so this is the endpoint that we need to tell AI Studio to send our information to. And basically when we send it to that URL, it's going to trigger this logic here. So if we go back to our agent, oh, that's cool, Dwayne. Yeah, I started messing around with like the app scripts last year, and once you get a little bit of the hang of it, it makes it so easy just because everybody has access to like sheets and docs. I really like learning that. That was cool. So if we go back here to our webhook, we'll put in that new URL here. And one really powerful tool in the AI Studio is that, again, we can do tests before we learn that something's breaking. So we see that it said row added successfully. And if we go open our Google Sheet, yep. So I haven't turned this into a full template, but if you'd like, I guess I could break these out into 3 separate templates. I could do that for you. Yeah, that would be cool. So we opened the Google Sheet, we saw that row successful, but we don't see any information, right? And that's because we just sent an empty request, basically. So if we go back here, I want to show a really nice feature in the AI Studio is that you can click on this little, what's it called, gear icon, and it allows you to add in test parameters. So fill in, like, for instance, if we had feedback and content, wait, that's the wrong order. This should be content, and then the feedback is this talk rocks. So these are the parameters that you've seen that we've been creating throughout, right? So we can add some value there, but also inherently, since we're using WhatsApp, we get access to all this information in the system. So if my username is Benjamin, we can set that as like the system variable that it would get already just from my phone. It would also get my phone number. So here, let's just put 55555. Hey, Syed, welcome. And so now that we've created these test values, we can try that again, and we should now see it actually in our Google Sheet. So we see row added successfully. So we pop over here. We see that we got all of those test values. So that's awesome. Now we know that that integration is actually working, and we can go back here, close out our variables. Actually, let's get rid of this one. close out our variables, go back. Oh, we'll save that. So just to catch up to speed, we've built out two features so far. We built out our LLM. The recording will be on the YouTube channel very soon. Okay, great. So you can catch the recording, but just to catch you up, we're finishing up now. We basically built out the first feature to answer very flexible questions from our users by hooking up our WhatsApp agent to an LLM where we gave it all the information that it can answer from. And now we just connected our WhatsApp agent with Google Sheets. And now we can test to make sure that that's working also from here. So we'll see that AI Studio does give us a little warning. Hey, there's some test values there, so that's good in case we get some behavior that we don't expect. So hello from Lucinda. Now let's test our feedback. Let's say swag this time. What should Lucinda know about the swag? The Lego give away is awesome. Send that. And now let's check that it's working. Oh, first we see that webhook executed successfully. Cool. So that makes us feel pretty good. And if we go to our little fake database in Google Sheets, we see that we're getting that information the same. Great. So if we go back to the agent and we go back to the very start, let's just clear this out. So we've done the first feature, the question with the Knowledge AI. We've done the second feature, the feedback with the Google Sheet. And now the last and the most intimidating feature, letting our users speak with a real human agent, Lucinda. So Lucinda, get ready. Your phone's going to blow up with questions after this. I'm joking. So we need to go back in our agent at that point in the flow where they say, okay, I want to chat. So now we'll need to connect this one down. And basically, we're using nodes that we've seen before. So, sorry. So the first thing we'll do is if they want to speak with an agent, we want to, I'm having a little bit. We want to give them a nice little message and ask, okay, so what do they need help with? And as a little bit of nice user experience, we'll also just send them this message which says, in the meantime, okay, help, my computer is on fire. So letting them know that it might take a second because we're connecting them with an agent. So now, like with the webhook, we're going to use one of our advanced nodes here, the live agent routing. So I know that this, for me, it was a little bit confusing because this little icon with the headset makes me think, oh, now somebody's going to be speaking to me. But what live agent routing does, it's actually still just sending the text because we're in WhatsApp, and in WhatsApp, we only have the text-based agent so far. Maybe in the future, we'll be able to add voice. But basically, what it does is through essentially also with webhooks, we are able to connect the agent with an external messaging platform. So in this case, we're going to use Slack, and we'll have to connect our Slack with the agent using a node application that we'll build as kind of a middleman. So first, I think I will just show you. I'm gonna walk you through this node. Just if y'all could just like write in the chat maybe what your experience level is with coding, or if you've used Node or JavaScript in the past. Okay. So This Node app that we're going to use to be kind of the delivery, the middleman between Slack and AI Studio. It's pretty small. It's just one file, the server.js. We do have the second file, our env file, where we just need to store two variables that we keep in env file for security, because that way we don't expose important information other than when you're on a call like this. But it's not a big deal. So how this app, or how this application, oh, sorry, I just realized that I'm not sharing this window. Here. Okay. So yeah, as I said, we have it doesn't seem that you can see. Can you see my cursor? You can't see my cursor, right? Sorry. Just trying. Okay. So here's our Node application. It's all in one file, the server.js, and we just have this env file. And in here, you're going to see quite a lot of code. It seems like a lot of code. It's about 150 lines. But basically what this is going to do is just hand off conversation that we're having between our WhatsApp agent and our Slack, our human agent in Slack. And so we're going to just walk through that step by step. At the beginning is some boilerplate node. So basically this is just to create any node application. Express Axios. So Express is our server. So that's what lets us run the app and basically keeps the app alive so that we can send information back and forth. Axios is it's what lets us send those requests. And then body parser helps us clean the information that we get back. So we'll create the app and we put it on port 3000. So that's the local port where you run it. And that will be important in a second when we're using our ngrok. And here we include those two pieces of information from the env file, our Slack webhook, and our AI Studio. So we'll show in a second where we get those information, the AI Studio key. So that's our like secret key. So AI Studio knows that it's actually us who's trying to pass information to our agent, and the webhook in Slack is what connects us with the channel where we'll send messages to. After we set up the app, and before we start talking about the functionality here, I kind of want to walk through what's happening. So when we are a user on WhatsApp and we go say chat Lucinda, says sure. Leia goes, please, we'll say that's what we need help with, connecting you to a team member. So the first thing that we're going to do is we need to create the link between the WhatsApp and the Slack. So if we look inside of our live agent routing, we're going to see that we have just two URLs here to start the connection. So that's what we're going to do to create the conversation. And then every time that we pass messages inbound, so that means messages from WhatsApp to the Slack, we also need to say where that goes. So as I said, we're going to run this app locally on port 3000, but we need to somehow make this accessible to to the AI Studio. And unfortunately, it does not have access to port 3000. That's just something that's on our computer. So what we do is we use a tool called ngrok. And what ngrok does is it basically forwards anything that comes, it creates this kind of goofy looking, oh, I need to share this one also. Present something else. So what ngrok does, you see it's a bit of scary stuff here, but basically what it does is it creates a public URL. So the kind of URLs that we're used to opening up on the internet, where we can just type something in and go to it. Because if we put in this HTTP localhost 3000, that's going to be specific just for each one of our computers. But what ngrok does is it basically it allows anyone through the internet to then be able to access that application that we're running on our computer. So this URL here is our ngrok URL, and that's what we're going to use to tell AI Studio how to access our application. So we take that ngrok URL, and then we're gonna go. This is a little bit frustrating with the presenting. So if we go into our live agent routing, we put that ngrok URL here, and then we hit, and then we say start. So whenever we create a connection, whenever we hit this node in AI Studio, it's then gonna go and say, okay, let me send a request to start. So what's that gonna do? It's then gonna go into our application and figure out what should it do next. So if we then go into our application, we can see what's the instructions for we can see what are in the instructions. So when AI Studio sends a request to that start endpoint, it's gonna send a request, and inside of there, it's gonna have a session. And the only reason that I know this is because I've looked at the AI Studio docs. I'll push that at the end, but you can see all that information there, and also you can see some really easy, like simplified tutorials that I've written about this as well. So inside of that request, when we create this conversation, we get a session and we get a transcription. So basically, AI Studio will send all of the conversation that it has up until that point in this thing called transcription. So we store that into a couple of variables in our application. We throw it into another piece of information called data. Now, why do we do that? Because basically we need to create something that Slack knows how to accept. So Slack knows how to accept an object where we tell it what the text is. And so inside that text, we're going to send the information about the session and the transcription. So this is what we're going to show to our agent in Slack. And then using the Axios, we then send it to that URL, which we defined in our environment variable, and we pass it this object, which contains basically the conversation up until this point. Now, where do we get that Slack webhook URL? When we are in, lucky for me, I have admin access to the Vonage community Slack, and sorry, I need to switch again what I'm presenting. So I can create apps in Slack, and so can you, as long as you have workspace that you're an admin for. So you'd go into your apps, you'd create a new app, you just give it a name. And then once you give it a name, what you need to do is do a couple pieces of configuration. The first is enable the incoming webhooks. So what incoming webhooks are is kind of the most basic version, a basic feature in Slack that allows you to, if you send the information correctly, it allows you basically to post messages in a Slack channel. And so that's what we did here. We turned on the incoming webhooks. We said, let's create a new webhook. Here you'll have to tell it which channel for. So we created a channel for this for tonight. You say allow. And now it creates a custom webhook that you can use for whatever purpose. And you can see that you can have multiple. I'm going to delete, I think. Anyway, I'll just leave it, I guess. But this is the one that I had from before, which we used in our application. And so you can see with this webhook, as long as you pass it right, you can pass in messages to write in that channel. So that's the first step. That's us doing the bridge to start a conversation. And if we go here. And then the second one was we saw, one thing I need to say, I'm sorry, is we're communicating between two different platforms. So we're communicating between AI Studio and Slack. And wow, I'm sorry. It's been a very long day and I just lost my train of thought. So when we start in Slack, we're going to get that information in. So let's just show how that works. So if we go back to here, let's close this. So if we open our tester, let's refresh. And first we need to connect here. So we've connected. Let me close this, making a bit of a mess. So we say we want to chat with Lucinda. Legos. Oh, I'm sorry. In the tester, the built-in tester, you don't have the ability to actually test the live agent. You can simulate how it would look, but we actually need to test in real WhatsApp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my WhatsApp and we can test this. So it's created a, just going to pull this one up. And going to show how this works. So now we see in actual WhatsApp, I scan the QR code, it opens our agent in WhatsApp. I'll hit chat with Lucinda. What can I help you with? Legos. It's connecting. So now if we, wait, I'm sorry. What's happening here? Did I just change something? Anyway, I'm sorry, we're running a little bit late. I will just show how this works and then answer any questions and can help you all in Slack one-on-one if you want to implement these. So I think when I added that new incoming webhook, it maybe messed things up. So let's go here. Let's try this again. So if I say hello, if we do start, what's happening? Why is it not sharing? So chat with Lucinda. It's not, it doesn't seem to be updating. On the screen, it's updating my computer. Legos. So connecting you with a all right, well, I don't know what's happening. I think when I did something just now that broke it, and I'm really sorry we're running quite late for this event. I can promise you that it was working 5 minutes before we started. But let me just run through the code. Basically, so when you start, it'll grab that. What we need to then do is connect the. We need to. So it starts the conversation, and then we have a situation where we need to connect the information that we're getting from AI Studio with Slack, and they are both being stored on each platform. So AI Studio has an ID for the conversation, and Slack has an ID for the conversation. So what we do is here we pass that information to Slack, and then in Slack we will need to actually here I think wow, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit got a little bit flabbergasted. I don't know why. But basically the agent will then in Slack then also need to start the conversation. So we create that logic here. They'll click a button which starts that initiates that conversation, and then lets the people in their team know, hey, Benjamin said he's on this ticket. When messages come from AI Studio to Slack, they'll hit this inbound. So each time we get the text, but we also get the session. And we use that session using this object called sessions, which we create here. And what sessions does is it basically links what is a session from AI Studio to what is a thread in Slack. And so then every time we have, and the endpoints going in each direction, if it's coming from AI Studio or if it's coming from Slack, we can make sure that the information gets presented correctly. So each time in Slack, the agent will write a message and they'll say which session is this for. They'll write the message, and then we can then create a post request to our AI Studio agent using that session to keep everything careful and send it to the right place. We use the AI Studio API key to make sure that it's getting sent to the right to our agent. And this goes back and forth until finally the agent in Slack will then end the conversation, and then it'll go back to AI Studio where we get our final message, which just says where we continue our flow. I'm sorry, we'll continue the flow the rest of the way. Let's go back to here. So in here, we define these two endpoints. Oh, I just realized why this thing wasn't working for a second, and it's because I never ran my node server. So I just want to very quickly show the flow. I won't go through every little part of the code because we're running pretty late, but if I do this again. So sorry for giving everyone whiplash with going between so many windows. Let's just go like this. We'll just do the screen and pull up the here. So we say chat with Lucinda, Lego giveaway. At this point, it says connecting you with a team member. Then if we open our Slack, so now that start conversation has worked. I can't believe I didn't run the server. Of course, it's something silly. We can see here that it passes in that session. It passes through the transcription. So that's sent to that post request. The agent here, we need to initiate the conversation. So what we can do, we created a action here. So we say start ticket. We see that triggers an event, and in our code, I think I pointed out where we saw the session scene. So we tell Slack to send a response so that we know that that endpoint executed correctly. Now, one of the frustrating things about building this out was learning that the Giphy command, like the Slack command, is reserved. It's actually, you can't do that from like inside of a thread. So that's why we have this little bit convoluted logic where we have to do reply, and then we need to pass the session. And that's why we have that logic of connecting a session to this thread. And so now we can say Legos will go to the winner. I wish you luck. So we pass that. And again, we handle that in the Slack side of the application so that the agent can also see. You can see here that if different team members in Slack are answering the same ticket, it'll show who answered it and what they said. And now if we open our WhatsApp, Legos will go to the winner. I wish you luck. Cool. Thanks for your help. See you later. And now we have one last command. So we see also customer response. So that's coming back and forth in real time. And then the last thing is we need to do close ticket and pass through this ID as well. So that says that the conversation's marked resolved. So now our team knows that that's finished. In WhatsApp, it returns to the flow that we had built out in AI Studio. So we see that message, thanks for using our service. That comes from here in the actual bot. And then lastly, we end the conversation. And just the one last part that I know is a little bit hard to follow. I do have tutorials on this and I'm happy to walk you through if you ping me on Slack anytime. But basically, we did have a little bit of setup in the Slack. So this is for that initial message. It has this URL where we send a post request. But then each of those other functionalities, we had to define here. So here, this is for that start conversation when the agent in Slack, when the team member in Slack starts a ticket, we define that here, which creates a shortcut. So we use two different ways that you have actions in Slack with a shortcut and then also with the slash command. So each time we did reply, you also fill that out and it looks very similar, the slash commands and the shortcuts. You define what is the command, where does it go, any information. So that might be helpful to the user. So we say, if you're using reply, you also need to pass the session ID. And that's how we make those available in Slack. And so, yeah, so we created an agent. It took about half an hour longer than it should have. If you want, you can scan this QR code and try it yourself in Slack. And let's go back here. If you have any questions, Sayed, Gabo, Jaya Prasad, thank you for sticking around through this whole demo. I hope something was interesting or you learned something. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sticking for the whole thing. Like as Lucinda said, there will be a recording. There's the AI Studio docs page, which has a lot of good information. If you go to the developer blog, you can just go by AI Studio and you'll actually see in here. So here's one of the integrations that's for voice, but here's the WhatsApp with Slack in 2 steps. Basically what we did the last part, which was like kind of the hardest part. Here you can see how to integrate with the Google Sheets. And Knowledge AI, there should be a blog post coming very shortly. And like I said, if you ever ping me on Slack, I'm really, really happy and appreciative that people take time to try and play with this stuff. Lastly, if some free API credit, so you can use that to start building in the AI Studio. And just want to say thank you. Thank you for sticking through this whole session. Lucinda, did you want to say some closing remarks?
No, I don't think so. Just second what you said. Thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, there's a link in the chat which you can complete a feedback form. It literally takes 1 minute, and everybody that completes it is then with the chance of winning a Lego set like you learned on the thing. So if you want to do that, you can. But yeah, I think
you have a very good chance. You have minimum 25% chance to win the Lego.
Very good chance, and it's one of the big Lego sets too, like one of the adult building ones. Like it's a good one. So yeah, if you want to do that, you can. But no, I think that's everything, and thanks again for joining us.
And the next Knowledge Quest is with Dwayne Hemmings, who's in the chat, and he has some really cool. He's always building really cool stuff with. It's a React workshop, right?
Yeah, okay. On the 19th of March.
19th of March. So if you enjoyed this at all, Dwayne is going to be much better and more charismatic.
And hopefully the platform will work for that one. Apologies again for the technical difficulties.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.